Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our forum with the candidates for Redmond City Council, hosted by the East King County Asian and Pacific Islander Coalition. My name is Ashwin Rao, and I will be your moderator this evening. Thank you very much to the candidates for making the time to speak with us tonight and answer some of our questions. I should mention at the top that this conversation is being recorded and will be shared with the campaigns to distribute. I also wanted to thank our sponsors for the evening, Indian American Community Services, the Chinese Information and Service Center, the Japanese American Citizens League, and Eastside for All. These organizations are all members of APIC, which is a coalition of community-based organizations dedicated to providing a collective voice for minority groups on the East Side. We are a nonprofit that does not fund nor endorse any candidates. So for the first hour this evening, I will ask questions submitted beforehand by community members that summarize our most pressing subjects. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer with randomized speaking orders. I will then ask follow-up questions or move us on to the next topic when it is time. At 7 o'clock, we will ask questions that have been submitted by attendees this evening. So if you have any questions, please write it in the chat and our team will sort through them. At 7:20, we will conclude with 90-second closing statements. Okay. So without further ado, let us begin with our opening statements. We will give each candidate 2 minutes to briefly explain their biography and why they are choosing to run for Redmond City Council in this election. And we will begin with Ms. Anderson. 2 minutes when you are ready.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hosting us this evening. It is a pleasure to serve on the Redmond City Council and a privilege. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this audience as well. I'm also very excited to talk a little bit about equity and what that might mean for the next 4 years on City Council. My background is in transportation, and I work in environmental sustainability, so I plan to continue some of that great work. I'm very excited about some work we're doing on the Environmental Sustainability Action Plan, as well as continue to support housing and infrastructure and economic justice as some main goals for the upcoming years. I bring a thoughtful leadership to the City Council. I'm not afraid to ask questions that are difficult and help the councils think through some different issues. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to continue to serve the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Melissa Stewart.
Well, thank you so much, Lalita, Ashwin, and everyone. And I see so many friendly faces on the call tonight. So thank you for taking the time and for your continued interest in local government. My name is Councilmember Melissa Stewart, and my family and I live in the Overlake Village neighborhood of Redmond. And it's really our neighborhood that inspired me to run for office 4 years ago. The city was about to begin the comprehensive planning process. So many of you on the call tonight were deeply, deeply involved in that. And I do want to thank you for not only your work on that, but your continued engagement, because now it's time to hold ourselves accountable to these big commitments that we made. As we made those big commitments to my neighborhood in particular, I learned along the way 3 pretty core values for my role on the council. First, I believe deeply in accessibility. I hold biweekly office hours at the Redmond Library. I was just there today, and I worked really hard to take government outside. Literally, we most recently held a council meeting in Estera Park, which is one of Redmond's very newest parks. I believe in consistency on policy and values and continuing to show up for Redmond's values and preparedness. There is a lot about this job that involves some kind of splashy things once in a while, but the heart of the job is to know your community, know what's important to your community, get that packet with 1,000 pages in it on Friday night and be ready to go by Tuesday. I really am a student at heart and really love that piece of the job. My priorities for the upcoming term include delivering on the housing that we need most. And I know we're going to talk about a bunch about that tonight. So I look forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Menka Soni.
Good evening, everyone. And first of all, thank you for doing this candidate forum so that we all can get some opportunity to speak and get connected. I'm Menka Soni, running for Redmond City Council, position number 6. And, I've been already working in the community. I've spent over 30 years in the corporate. I've worked in organizations and corporates like Microsoft, T-Mobile, Starbucks. So I bring that technical experience. But along with that, I've been also serving as Redmond Arts Commissioner from last 5 years, and I've been Vice President for One Redmond Foundation for over a decade. Apart from this, I run a nonprofit organization, Empowering, which has been helping communities at a grassroots level. We from feeding 2,500 homeless every week to providing interim shelter, supporting domestic violence victims, working on the mental health, and even supporting cancer patients. We have been doing a lot. So we call ourselves as, we fill in the gaps that has been left by a lot of organizations, and we get connected with the communities right when and where they need. So I bring all the experiences right from the community, and also an experience working from as your arts commissioner as well as vice president for One Treatment Foundation. My priorities definitely are aligned with an affordable housing. It's also aligned with the public safety, because as city is growing, we really want to make sure that everybody is safe. Of course, coming from a small business and an economic development that we want to see with our city, flourishing with that. And then apart from that, of course, an environment sustainability. I definitely believe in a city that is growing, but the growth is stable, sustainable, equitable, as well as it's a place where everybody thrives, not just live.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Vivek Prakriya.
Thank you, and thank you to Lolita. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you for putting this together and making this so accessible. My name is Vivek Prakriya, and I'm running for Redmond City Council position 2. So I'll give you a little bit about my background and then priorities. So I'm a lifelong Redmond resident, born and raised here in the same house that I'm sitting in right now, actually in the Overlake region of Redmond. I attended public schools here in the Lake Washington School District up until middle school, then went straight from middle school to college to UW, where I'm studying computer science, physics, and math. I am a founding engineer at an AI startup now valued at over $30 million. Previously, I also interned at Amazon as a machine learning engineer in the payments division. And I started coming to council meetings. I think it was over a year ago. It was, I think, August of last year. I attended my first city council meeting. And I really just wanted to attend one meeting to learn what does city council do on a day-to-day or on a week-to-week basis rather, because as a resident, maybe you hear about some of the more flashy things that council does. The community will come out for the opening of the 2 line, but I was just really curious, what are all these meetings about that they have on a week-to-week basis? And I went to that one meeting thinking, hey, I'm just going to go to one city council meeting. But I was really interested, honestly. I think they were discussing some tree study or something. I don't remember exactly. But I was really interested in what was going on. So I went to a second council meeting, and then I went to another one, and I went to council meetings pretty much every week for about 6 or 7 months. I know folks on the council were like, who the heck is this kid who keeps showing up week after week when there's nobody else in council chambers? But my priorities, that helped inspire me to run, and my priorities, um, my biggest priority, I think, in if I were to be elected is housing. I think folks of my generation who grew up in Redmond don't see a path to any kind of home ownership or any kind of equity ownership in this city. Oh, sorry.
You're fine. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I
But
appreciate it.
yeah, that answer actually leads us very well into our first topic of the day, which will be housing, specifically the Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan, which has very ambitious concepts for growing out the neighborhoods in downtown, Overlake, and Marymore Village. So our first question for the candidates to set the stage will be, what is your vision for these neighborhoods over the next 5 years? How many units would you say would be income restricted, and what tools would you use to make sure that those neighborhoods remain affordable for existing residents? So we'll begin with Ms. Shirley Anderson. 2 minutes.
I was going to ask you if you might be able to paste that question. That will really help me into the chat. That would be awesome. So I can hit on all those several items in that. So my vision for the neighborhoods and communities in the 2050 plan. The 2050 plan is incredibly comprehensive, as in its name, and I thought that the planning process was great this last year plus that we've been working on that plan, and that'll be setting the vision for the next, until 2050. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about the plan and what the staff did a great job on, just a couple of things to highlight in this very bulky document, is the commitment to some of the changes that we incorporated for our environmental sustainability commitments throughout the plan, in the idea of a 10-minute walkable community wherever you are in the city. Those are just some things that really impact the folks that are renters, the folks that are in our affordable units, and also being able to think about how we expand services throughout the neighborhoods in the community. So those are the big picture Redmond 2050, on path for what would be a beautiful city in 2050. We're kind of working through some of the transition between the 2030 plan and 2050 plan right now. So I would expect to see some of that. As a resident, you might be seeing a lot of different construction projects that are actually on the older plan versus a new one. I'm really excited about some of the innovative work that we're doing as well. And I can't really pick out any specific highlights at the moment. But the question was, what tools will we support to make sure there's affordability? And I think there's also a threshold question in there about affordable units. I've been supportive of moving from our minimum 10% affordable units. I think we were successful in getting that to be a 20% minimum in the new construction facility. I know that Miss Stewart will correct me if I'm wrong. And sorry to mention you, but she's wonderful at housing. And then there's other, I love the idea of additional stories and work on sort of larger, taller buildings within the facility. Use of space above ground is a very important part of making the market a lower cost to rent throughout the city. So I think there's one other comment I wanted to make there, but I think my time is up. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course, we'll continue speaking about this. Yeah. Next, we have Mr. Prakriya, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think when it comes to, those three specific zones, I think the comprehensive plan does a great job at spelling out, good growth targets for those zones, particularly because, we have light rail now. So these are the urban centers where we want folks to not have to use a car, or we want to incentivize folks to not have to use a car. And we can do that by, creating density around transit, so that if someone wants to get to Seattle, they can walk out of their building in the Overlake region, go hop on the 2 line and get all the way to downtown Seattle. That is the dream, because nobody likes traffic. But what is traffic? Traffic is just people in cars. So if you can incentivize folks to not be in cars, that is just a wonderful thing for a city. In terms of the numbers, I think the overall comprehensive plan numbers are very good, but my view on housing is that to actually reach these very, very, really, really important goals for a city to get to actually affordable numbers, you need holistic, around the board planning, right? And I think what's being done to urbanize our transit centers is great, but I think what's also really important, and maybe what's touched on a little bit less, is plans for middle housing in other neighborhoods in Redmond. And I think this is something that I kind of want to bring and emphasize on council if I am elected. I'll give you a specific example, or ADUs in neighborhoods. I think in Redmond right now it's particularly difficult to build an ADU, even compared to some of our neighboring cities like Kirkland that have, pre-approved ADU plans. And I think that housing is a holistic issue. You have to attack it from all angles. If you want to drain this bathtub, you have to poke multiple holes.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the question about the transit-oriented centers and what we achieved in Redmond 2050. First, I do just want to acknowledge, I appreciate the accolades from my colleague. I am the only incumbent on the current ballot who voted in favor of Redmond 2050, and it was one of the things that I was very proud to do in my first term. Couple of things to answer your question, Ashwin. we are building a plan around these transit-oriented centers, and that is going to create a lot more supply with deeper affordability. We're really proud in Redmond to have had inclusionary zoning for decades now. In 2 of our 3 urban centers, what we've done in Redmond 2050 and the code package that was adopted thereafter is we have deepened that level of affordability that's required and increased the number of units that are required. And that is not in capital A affordable housing. That is, if you are going to build market rate housing, more of it needs to be affordable or accessible, at least, to a greater number of everyday average folks, and especially those who don't work in the tech sector, which has such a predominant place in our community. I think that we'll have succeeded in these transit-oriented centers when these are the most highly demanded neighborhoods to live in as well. It is true, these neighborhoods are going to be built out without parking minimums, but that is also an attraction to folks who are, their housing is going to cost less because the payment to, it didn't cost as much to build out parking that they don't want because they live right across the street from a light rail station. These are things that the community told us they very deeply wanted. And we should mention that there's a role for the traditional neighborhoods in this too. If Redmond 2050 were to be fully realized in our traditional neighborhoods, about 20% would convert to the middle housing types that are so highly demanded for folks who want to break into the ownership market, such as duplexes, triplexes, stacked flats, and townhomes. We know there's a lot of folks who would like to be able to experience ownership in their lifetime.
Thank you. And Ms. Menkasoni. You're muted, ma'am.
So first of all, definitely want to give kudos to entire city council because Redmond 2050 is a kind of a very visionary plan that has been put together. Over 700 affordable housing has been already added. I know currently we are sitting at a 12%, and the target is to be 24% by 2050 to have more affordable housing. Now, there are a lot of things that are already happening, and everybody has just already spoken about transit-oriented development that we want to bring so that, there are more and more affordable housing can be built around this. However, I just want to also highlight a couple of challenges that, I've been noticing. It's like, we need to have a very distributed siting, not just put everything closer towards one area in an urban. We have to start looking out into all different neighborhoods where we can start looking with a different lens for bringing up more and more of these affordable housing. Truly, there should be a roof and a shelter for everybody. There should be a home, whether it's a nurse, whether it's a senior, whether it's the young generations. Like, I know when my kids will come out of colleges, they should be able to afford a home in Redmond. That's what we all are targeting about. Now, there is definitely, as Council Member Stewart mentioned, Redmond has adopted a lot of inclusionary zonings, and there is even a multi-family tax exemptions that has been done. But what I also want to see, being in the council, is it's like these are not just the numbers and the projects that has been put together in on the papers, but there is an action, and there is a transparency that is available for everybody to see what is happening. We definitely want to bring more and more affordable housing because that is one of my biggest priority and passion while working at a grassroots with several homeless and low-income families. So I definitely want to see that happen and want to ensure that whatever progress we are doing, whatever metrics we are collecting, is equally made available for people to see that, so that we know what is the growth.
Thank you. So our next question is along those lines. It seems like most of the city council candidates embrace affordability mandates and inclusionary zoning. But with 90 seconds, our question is, how would you envision providing our neighbors with supportive skills and stuff like upskilling opportunities, affordable childcare, and mental health support? So you each have 90 seconds for this question. We'll begin with Ms. Stewart.
Sure, I love this question. And when it comes to housing, we have a lot of tools in the toolkits. We've talked about inclusionary zoning. We've talked about a few of these others. I'm also really proud to support permanent supportive housing, and the regulations that we have adopted in the city of Redmond a couple of years ago have already proved to be very useful. And last week, I got to attend the groundbreaking for Plymouth's additional 100 units of permanent supportive housing. You asked about a couple of other things as well. Childcare, for instance, because of our work in Redmond 2050 and really the community outcry for more options, more choice. Basically, childcare businesses are now zoned, they're allowed outright in any zone in our city that's not industrial. This is creating a lot more real estate opportunity for these types of businesses to come online. A couple of the other things you mentioned when it comes to like the other types of skills and collaborative and workforce support. I am a huge fan of, and I know so many of you are involved in this project, but I'm a huge fan of the project that is coming online at the former Sound Transit surplus site, which is going to be built by Bellwether and have so many of you there to build out that support, that multicultural support for small business owners, for increased connections among the entrepreneur community. This is not only a very much needed resource in our community. It's a community I was proud to support by voting for more resources from the City of Redmond to support the building, as well as making sure that the city actually did our part by buying a place in that building with you all so that we can also have city services right next to you. I also, I'm just so proud of this, and it's going to be a hallmark of the intercultural district, which is where it is going to be located.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Prakriya.
Thank you. And sorry, do you mind putting that full question in the chat? Again, I
Yeah,
want to write down.
I will. So essentially, how do you plan to provide the supportive services for folks in our cities with things like childcare, mental health support, beyond just having inclusionary zoning?
No, so yeah, sorry, I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure I didn't miss any part of
yeah.
that question. Yeah, I think I'll touch on 2 points here. Number one is I think Councilmember Stewart just mentioned encouraging entrepreneurship. I knocked on the door of someone a little while ago who was running a childcare center, and I've knocked on the doors of several small business owners. One thing I think the city can do better is bridge the gap for small business ownership and small business entrepreneurship, because oftentimes people have a business that they can run out of their home or a business that is sustainable at maybe 5 to 10 people or any small number. But the minimum it would take for them to actually get kind of an established business in the city is just too high for them to get to that level. And that gap, I think, crushes a lot of small businesses in Redmond. So that's number one, is I think bridging that gap for childcare, for any kind of mental health support. Well, actually, when it comes to mental health support, I think this is more of a question for human services, and I serve on the Services Commission in Redmond as its youth advisor. I think, human services at the city level is extremely important because they can touch on unique deficits that are not being addressed at the city level. Our human services budget at the city level is actually lower per capita than some King County programs. And I think other levels of government have higher amounts of money to spend to address big picture issues, but sometimes things like mental health support or other more niche needs kind of get dropped to the cities, and that's what human services in a city can help provide.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Soni.
So for me, Redmond is about people. So, that's a reason when you're talking about how we can provide the opportunities, the childcare and mental health support, you're talking about people. So, during my door knocking, what I've been observing, and as I've been talking to people, everybody wants to keep their children safe on the streets. People are working to be able to pay their mortgages and rents for this thing. So definitely they're looking out for more of the childcare opportunities. Now, how do we get them engaged? It's basically we have to reach out to these folks to understand what they need, where they need, and getting this data from all the public information, that will be very helpful for us to start planning into some of these things. We definitely have to work on the mental health support. I'll tell you, just recently in the last 2 weeks, I have handled 4 cases where, because of the job losses, people are being impacted with the mental health, and that is actually impacting their housing situation. So these are the real examples that I'm bringing, and definitely that's where I think it's going to be very important and crucial for us to ensure that when these kinds of situations are happening, we have our tools, we have our people, we have our human services department or a police department or a healthcare department or behavioral services department, they are ready, and that there is a transit options available where people are able to drop off their kids to the childcare in less time and not sitting in the traffic. So there will be different things that we need to do in this regard.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. All the participants actually touched on several of the issues that I also support. I wanted to add a perspective, which was I've been honored to serve as the position of committee chair for our Public Safety and Human Services Committee as a committee of the whole for the council for 2 years. And I learned a lot of things about public safety and the intersection between public safety and our Human Services. Human Services Commission also does an outstanding job at supporting some of our community members. Plus, some of the things that we did in the last budget cycle was really focused on diverse businesses, and we've updated some of our criteria to expand the funding opportunities for diverse multicultural organizations. And I thought that the city did a great job and commission did a great job on that. So thank you, Vivek. I really appreciate your work. A couple of things that I wanted to add was the idea of workforce development and specifically for city services versus so specifically for workforce development, we can look at partnerships outside the city as well as city services and funding opportunities within the city. So we have strong partnerships with a lot of different organizations, and we can really look at opportunities to develop our workforce. Trade jobs, skilled trades is one of the big ones, working with the Lake Washington Institute of Technology, for example, and the Cascadia College. The Tech Together Center is a great example of this. And then there was one other comment I wanted to make about supportive services. I'm personally interested in making sure that we fund sexual assault and domestic violence, as well as our legal services within the city. Those are some areas that we've heard from our community that we have some need in. Thanks.
Thank you. So along those lines, we know that building affordable housing and having robust communities is not just about having a roof over your head, but having community spaces and affordable retail. So if you are elected or re-elected, what policies or resources could you offer to ensure that Redmond is able to implement its plans for mixed-use neighborhoods in inclusive and equitable ways? So we'll begin that with Mr. Prakriya. Let me just post that question in the chat.
Thank you. And no, that is a great question. I think when it comes to building supportive, inclusive communities, there are a few aspects that are important. Number one is ensuring a sense of public safety, and public safety for all. I believe that safety is a mentality where the expectation of a lack of safety oftentimes creates a real lack of safety. Second of all, I think that we need to make sure that very, very basic needs are being addressed, because that I do believe in Maslow's hierarchy, where if someone is not getting fed, if a child is not getting fed at school, then they're going to come home and they're not going to have that inclusive community around them. So we need to partner with the school board. We need to partner with other organizations in the city to make sure that these basic needs are taken care of. When it comes to the specifics of this question, in terms of mixed use developments, I really believe what's important here is just careful long-term planning. Really looking at the data, addressing the needs of a city. If we need a childcare location in this part of the city, then we need to plan for that 5 or 10 years out. If we have a need for a place where young people can congregate, we need to make sure that that's taken care of. I believe that we need to look at the data and we need to plan for this for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Soni. When you're ready, you're muted still. Ms. Soni, are you ready? Yes.
Sorry, my internet just just got stable. So definitely, when we are talking about, to make it happen, we have been talking about the mixed use policies, and we've been talking about an equitability. I think to make that happen, the first and the first and the foremost thing is a cultural awareness. Redmond is a city where a major population is foreign bound. So, we need to understand, first of all, and there are a lot of areas which are in an underserved and an underprivileged. Like, we have to start understanding some of the cultural and community engagement, try to understand what exactly is required so that we are able to understand and cater to those need. And then we need to bring these voices back to our city in our planning, in our policy making, so that we are able to put all of these pieces together as a puzzle and then, work on some of these things. I definitely want to see a very equitable policies that are there and with the diverse housing options. And in fact, I would also say this is also going for the tenants, because they are majority of the time, they are also dealing with some of these situations. So we have to come up with some of the policies that is also helping them. So definitely looking into the business side, where we are able to bring all these transit oriented development with the housings, with the businesses and walkables and the transportation. And at the same time, we are able to hear these voices so that we are able to help not only our small and minority owned businesses, but also able to serve to some of these underserved communities and, being able to cater to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Anderson.
I love this question because it's a hidden transportation question. So understanding how neighborhoods operate, especially with our multi-story downtown buildings, for example, is really how do we connect people to the businesses as well as getting to and from home and work. It's really important for us to have that diversity of businesses, opportunities for our small businesses and disadvantaged business enterprises. And ultimately, the city can do a lot of things. I think we're working on our sustainable procurement policy as one of the things that's been on the list for a little while. And ultimately, we can collaborate with the small businesses. We can work with our housing developers to make sure that the folks that are feeling listened to for what they need in the city. And we are working as a council to implement some of those things to make sure that their voices are heard, especially our renting community. And then ultimately, the other piece of that was curb management and parking downtown. Those things come up a lot. We just recently saw a parking plan and proposal for things that may be some changes that you'll see in the city as the light rail has been coming in and our transit oriented development. So there's a lot of big changes that we're expecting, and it looks like you may be seeing some of those changes, but to get businesses, customers in the door and those kinds of things. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ashwin. I'm going to acknowledge that this is a hard one. It's a hard one, not just the question, but this is one of the hardest things that we have going on right now. And I think we should also acknowledge that equity is a guiding principle of Redmond 2050 because the community asked it to be. And now it's part of my job and what I hope to do in a second term to hold the city accountable to delivering on that. This is the biggest demand for equity that the city has seen. We know that the way that the city has been built out and who has benefited from that is different than who needs our attention most now. So the policies of Redmond 2050 absolutely lay out a roadmap, but I'm acknowledging for you that the environment is very hard. A couple of things on my mind about this. We are lowering costs wherever we can. This is in the more immediate. We have anti-displacement as a key tenet of the economic strategic development plan. I voted for this plan, and I also voted for the budget. I'm the only incumbent on your ballot who voted for the budget that added small business support staffing in the city of Redmond, which has been so badly demanded by our community. Time is ticking down. I have a few other things to say. We are also lowering costs when we don't require parking. We have a beautiful incentive package that when it comes to neighborhoods like Overlake and Marymore Village, those incentive packages are going to make sure that as the neighborhood develops, they're not just the densest neighborhoods, but the developers are also helping us at the same time build out a neighborhood that someone can be just as proud to live in as the person who lives on Education Hill and has multiple points of access to pickleball. We want these neighborhoods to be awesome places to live.
Thank you. So we'll actually give you more time to speak about this because our question now wants to get into the specifics of how we could take advantage of the light rail expansion and specifically next year's World Cup to help support our struggling small businesses. How can we make sure that this opportunity is something that all of our small businesses will be able to take advantage of and try and be as specific as possible? So we'll give you each 90 seconds, and it is Ms. Stewart who gets to speak first.
Sure, absolutely. Light rail is already making a huge difference, and opening these last two stations in Redmond this year has connected our three urban centers. It has already made a tremendous difference, and the downtown Redmond light rail station has already become the most common place for someone to swipe into the two line in the entire system. It's already making a huge difference. When it comes to light rail, again, I voted for the budget, and so that means I voted to add on additional capacity for the Economic Development Strategic Plan, the Tourism Strategic Plan, which has several key deadlines that marry with the timeline of the World Cup next year, as well as the small business support staff with the Economic Development Strategic Plan. I actually want to turn, if you are a small business owner and you are listening to this call, I want to turn your attention to a staff report that the council had just this past Tuesday. If you can't find it, send me an email. I'm happy to dig it up for you. But we actually had a really beautiful presentation from the team that has been working on all of this for Redmond and getting us prepared for World Cup. I want residents to know that while we're doing a lot to make sure that not only our city gets to benefit from the economic opportunity that the World Cup represents, but that our small businesses and our businesses owned by people of color and our women-owned businesses are able to benefit from that moment also. The other thing that we're doing for World Cup is making sure that the city continues to operate key services through all of that too. So in our vote for the budget last year, those are some of the key things that we took on. If you're a small business owner, visit the Redmond website, get connected. Just this week, we had another opportunity for you to learn more about the resources available.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Prakriya.
Thank you. I think, there are a few things that can be done here. Number one is just the fact that we have tens of thousands of folks who are going to ride the two line. Means, yeah, we have a unique opportunity to capitalize on making small businesses thrive in Redmond. And I think we can do that through a few ways. One particular way is, and I know the city is working on this already. I believe in the tourism strategic plan is, just improving our signage, improving our wayfinding. I think that's something that could really, really help out. Another thing that has been touched upon is, reducing those parking minimums near our transit hubs so that you have a bunch of small businesses. And those small businesses are able to be as accessible as possible to folks who are getting on or getting off urban transportation hubs. Another thing that we can do is, enhance the permitting process in time for the World Cup for many of these small businesses that are just coming in, because that is a deadline for when thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of folks will travel through Redmond, and we want to make sure that businesses are as prepared as possible for that time period of explosive growth in Redmond, and they're able to take advantage of that. When it comes to equity in terms of small businesses, I think, the city can work to make sure that everything we do permitting wise, everything we do in supporting small businesses is also done from a multilingual front. We have so many businesses that are run by folks for whom English is not a first language, and I think we can use that diversity, but also make sure that we're still being accessible when it comes to city policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Soni.
So World Cup is definitely talk of the town, and I'm hearing this while in my Arts Commission meeting as well as One Redmond Foundation meetings. There has been different initiatives that are already being taken, and then those who don't know that there are grants that are available for anybody who wants to have have a viewing of the World Cup, and then they can create small events, and then they can get that small grant. So that would be very, very helpful for people to use. Second thing, I definitely feel whenever there are events, it always helps the small businesses. So I'm always a champion of bringing some of these businesses, some of these events together that we can put so that all our small businesses can get benefit. And we definitely need to highlight our multicultural businesses, whether it's a food, whether it's arts, whether it's a community pride. So I think it would be a time, and that particular time frame everybody should be highlighting, and it should can also become a showcase for their cultural strength as well. Definitely, we can partner up now with the different community orgs that are existing, and with One Redmond Foundation, with the city, with the Arts Commission. I know there are different other groups that exist. We all can work together to ensure that it is benefiting our communities, it is benefiting our businesses, it is benefiting our city, and putting up some good showcases outside, maybe a big soccer ball right at the Redmond downtown, where people just feel connected with that. So it's going to be most vibrant and most ahead of every city, I must say, when it comes to there.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. You asked specifically for a couple of things on small businesses and taking advantage of this. I kind of touched on some of that on my last comment, but again, this is a hidden transportation question, which is really fun. But one of the things I thought as a specific thing would be coordinating the King County Metro and Sound Transit on timing so that it's easier to use transportation for folks. And I'm very excited about the connection finally to downtown Seattle. I think that will be a huge change. That's a longer term than the World Cup, but overall, that's going to be a very dramatic change to the community, and making sure that all of our signal timing and coordinated transportation services are all together. I would love to see continued work on our sidewalk program for walkability and making sure that folks that are trying to get access to our retail businesses can. And then also, once again, parking management to ensure turnover for the folks that are visiting the town. And the last comment I'll make is affordable leasing options for some of those retail facilities as well for our smaller businesses.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So our next question, you will have 2 minutes. We're moving on to discussing the budget. And specifically, Redmond is incredibly vulnerable to layoffs at Microsoft or Amazon. These two tech giants have massive ancillary impacts on Redmond's retail, real estate, tax revenue, and family-owned businesses. So for 2 minutes, what steps would you take on City Council to protect local businesses and find revenue sources and protect the budget during potential economic downturn, specifically with tech? And we'll begin that with Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pretty nuanced question, and one that came up quite a bit in the last legislative session. So I do think it would be helpful to get that one populated in the chat. Well, I'll begin to say, what do we need to do to protect Redmond businesses? We need to diversify Redmond businesses. We need to diversify Redmond's economy. This is so intricately linked with all of our other goals, including making sure that everyone who is working to make our community great has an opportunity to live here. So this is again connected to our housing goals. Protecting Redmond businesses means a lot of things. It means making sure that we are in good relationship, first and foremost, with everyone, that we are able to be in good partnership with some of our large employers without sacrificing all of the other needs that our community has. I look around this coalition. I serve on the board of Together Center. I see so many of you who are on this call tonight running your organizations, at least in part, from Together Center. And I know how hard you work because of the way that our community is currently organized. And we need to work every day to protect the vitality of our community. During any potential economic downturn, how can we protect this economy? There is a lot of uncertainty right now. I do understand that. This is a community that has benefited from our growth. So we actually are in a very good place in relationship to many of our peer cities because of the development revenues over time. We have very good financial policies, and the fiscal policies are set for renew this year because of work that I asked for in the last budget process to make sure that equity now can be also included in that process. But our fiscal policies ensure that we do not pay for one-time services, with ongoing services with one-time revenue so that we don't hit a cliff that I think your question is getting to that would be really, really tough to recover from.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Soni.
So I have been a small business owner in City of Redmond, and the situation that you're talking about, I have personally gone myself through that, where I lost my businesses and I could not afford to bring them back in Redmond because they were really expensive, and my husband lost his job. So, I can totally correlate and understand the sentiments that is required in this case. And I definitely think that with the city, we need to work in favor of some of these small businesses. Specifically, we have to start talking about a resilience and diversification, so that these guys, like in all the small business, are able to sustain in this kind of a situation. Maybe considering some kind of a small grants that can be provided that can help them. Majority of the businesses, they fail in their earlier phases because there is a lack of resources and support and the grant. So some of these accelerating grants can definitely help. And I truly believe that city might be having some kind of a reserves for these kind of a situations in the budgets, and that would be definitely helpful for the small businesses. End of the day, like I was just talking about how we look into the different areas that brings more buyers and more consumers, so that we can help these small businesses. So definitely we have to start looking out, like whether it is through a tourism, whether it's through an innovation, or whether it's from bringing the newer ways of doing the business and reaching out to the communities, reaching out to the buyers more and more, talking about these businesses. One Redmond has been already doing a lot of these things, and I'm proud to be part of One Redmond Foundation doing all of this stuff. But definitely, as I said, we have to start looking how and where we can help and coach these small businesses so that they can be resilient, and at the same time provide them some kind of a resources, and that could be even some of a financial resource that can help them to sustain this difficult situation. So, the phases will not remain the same, but we have to hold the hands for them.
Thank you. Mr. Prakriya is next.
Thank you. And yeah, no, this is a very, very nuanced question. I really appreciate the questions that are being asked here. These are great questions. I think I will echo what has been said on diversification, but I do think that, a city like Redmond that has a $4 trillion tech company in our back door can only diversify so much. And there's just a mathematical reality of that. So when it comes to what we can do to support small businesses, um, we can have grants, but I think we need to do two things, which is number one, proactive monitoring of the economic situation. We on council, I want to be meeting with, 1 to 2 small business owners at least every week, just to get an insight into how their operations are going, what would actually happen if they lose maybe some source of revenue, some source of grants from the city, how that would affect their operations so that we are prepared for boom bust cycles like this. I also do think that a budget reflects a city's values, and I think that Redmond is a city of innovation. I think that we are one of the most innovative cities in the world, and I want us to look really closely at our budget, to think about creative ways that we can we can look into saving money, creative ways that we can look into uh, using this money for support for small businesses, for instance. I think I may be wrong about this, but I was talking to someone who used to be on council. I think Redmond used to have like a $250,000 innovation fund in their budget that we did not have in the last budget cycle. I might be wrong about that, but I didn't see it anywhere in the budget. And that's something that I believe returned a net positive on. But I think that we need to be innovative with our budgets, and we need to be in close contact with our small businesses to remain proactive in these situations. And I think there was a question in there about new revenue as well.
Yes.
I believe that any kind of, sorry, I'll make this really quick. Any kind of new revenue the city looks at should be progressive, as progressive as possible. Whether that means taxing um multiple home excessive home ownership in the city, making sure that homes are for people, not for corporations. That should be the first thing we look at.
Okay. Thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. This is a really interesting question, and I'm going to reframe it a little bit, because I think one of the question behind the question is that this is really a part of a pay inequality question that is a stark contrast between our tech workers and our service workers in the community. And as a council, part of our job is to protect the small businesses as well as our restaurant industry and those kinds of smaller businesses that make less money than a tech company by, for example, council can support unionization work at Microsoft and Amazon. We can make sure that there's employee protections at the city for the loss of head tax that we would get from those bigger companies in those situations. And ultimately, our budget is built with a little bit of padding so that it can withstand uncertainty, but there is situations where as a council, it is our responsibility to help protect and ensure protections for city staff as well. So one of the things I'm very proud about working on at the council has been pay equality throughout all of the boards and commissions that I've been privileged to serve on. But ultimately, if we don't actually have conversations about wages, we're not going to solve the housing problem. We're not going to solve the uncertainty of economic conditions within Redmond or within the county at all. So I think it's really important to look at how we support the people in the community and where the line is drawn on what we can do to not interfere with small businesses, but also make sure that we create a supportive environment for them to continue to grow and diversify. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final subject of the evening is human services, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. So the first question is, some nonprofits have observed that the city's human service initiatives often trend towards big public celebrations, religious themed, rather than less glamorous but more vital human and crisis care services. So the question is, on the city council, how would you approach budgeting and accountability with the human services budget? And specifically, how would you measure success in human services? So that question will go to Ms. Soni first.
I'm very happy to answer this question first because this is pretty much aligned with my passion. I come from a nonprofit background and been working at a grassroots level with several people, and I know why human services budget is very important. Currently, I believe it's like 1% has been allocated for the human services, which in my opinion, first of all, is low. Definitely there should be some room of increasing the human services budget because as I just brought up in an example, like there are mental health issues which are coming up because of the job loss and these situations. But specifically to your question, it's like the budget is currently being spent on several areas and not to the real needs. I would definitely echo that. We need to totally understand what are our real needs. So I work day and night with people, those who are around, whether it is a food, there's a food insecurity, where there's domestic violence, like that has been increasing like anything. And these the lawyers and all these things are pretty expensive for anybody to afford that. And then there is, because of these domestic violence, the sex trafficking is also increasing. So there are different other areas which are popping up. It's not exactly the same what it was a few days or a few weeks or a few months earlier. It is changing and evolving, and we need to understand what are those critical needs, what are those critical issue areas where we need to spend more. So I believe like the human services funding, first it has to be increased, and then it has to be realigned with the issues that are evolving and coming up on the surface, because the city needs to have that funding available, the resilience available, because you never know what is going to be the situation. Just like COVID has taught us, and we were not prepared. There could be more situations that could be coming up because of the environmental changes and situations that are happening with the jobless and specifically where our country is moving. So I would say definitely we need to keep some more funding available for our human services so that we are able to help with this. And our success would be when our people are safe, heard, and they are, they are able to live and thrive.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Stewart.
Yes, thank you so much. And this is an ongoing conversation, and we're not going to solve it in 2 minutes. Because I am currently your council member, if there's anyone on the call who would like to follow up with me to continue the conversation, please do. I'm at the moment, given the environment that we're in, which we haven't mentioned too much in this conversation, I do want to say that my definition of success for human services at the moment is that local government is a reliable partner to our human services providers in the city of Redmond. we're not able to rely on all levels of government right now. Local government has traditionally been the most trusted level of government. And it's really important to me that we put in the work to maintain that level of trust. And as pointed out in the question, to keep going and building the trust. There's a couple of things about this. This is a great critique that you mentioned about possibly too many religious events that are possibly being interpreted by the commission as actually cultural events. So that's an awesome critique. I would love to follow up and have more conversation about that. We do have a human services strategic plan that came out last year. And so when the new budget cycle came through, I was proud to vote for an increased dollar per capita or increased funding per capita here in the city of Redmond, so that we're putting more dollars out the door for human services, and we're also putting more dollars out the door for more organizations and service providers who are being run by people who are most impacted by the need. We have a lot more organizations of people of color, for instance, being served in this current budget than in prior budgets. I understand that we have work to do and to continue to go on that. To the point about needing to continue to firm up the relationships, to strengthen the resilience of these relationships between the city and the service providers, I was really proud to be in partnership and conversation with some of you right now, which resulted in an extra $250,000 that we were able to allocate for rapid response right now for those of you who are supporting needs right now for families who are being mostly impacted by the immigration enforcement. So I was really proud to be able to do that. That is a step. That is not a one-time allocation of $250,000 does not a relationship make. And we have a lot of work to continue to do on that. And I look forward to be held accountable by all of our partners here in Redmond.
Thank you. Mr. Prakriya is next.
Thank you. And I want to touch on a couple points here. Number one is, being on the Human Services Commission, despite being a non-voting member, I'm, in these conversations that folks on the council maybe are not privy to, because, we have 126 different grant applications this year that council already has too much on their hands to go look through each individual one. One point I want to make, and it's going to sound very, very hand wavy, but I believe that this is very important, is I do want to see I want to see more of a data-driven approach to how we allocate our human services money. Because being in these conversations sometimes, we are making decisions about hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars in a vote in a human services meeting. And we honestly don't have much data about the effectiveness of some of these programs. Sometimes someone on the commission will ask a question that's fairly basic about the effectiveness of some program, and the data just does not exist. And it sometimes feels like we are making hand-wavy decisions with large amounts of taxpayer dollars. I want to also say that I know organizational change is something that is extremely difficult to do. And it's easy to sit here as a non-incumbent and say all gung-ho, like, oh, we need more numbers, we need all of this, when it's very difficult sometimes to procure these numbers. It's very difficult to, I think there have been studies on this, to change organizations by more than 10% in a given direction, but that is something I want to push for, are more clear metrics on the effectiveness of our human services, because, sometimes our human services, like if we're supporting someone learning English, that's something that's going to pay dividends for decades in the future. So we need different ways to judge that on a quantitative level to other kinds of human services. That's just a conversation that needs to be had. When it comes to the other point about religious ceremonies, I don't believe on the commission we really deal with that, but if any issue raised by the community needs to be seriously looked into by council, and I'm not an incumbent, but I want to be as accessible as possible, so I'll leave my phone number at the end of this chat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. So how would I approach budgeting and accountability with human services? I want to just point out one of the things council also was successful at is changing the formula that we use to calculate the amount of money we give to human services, so that our awesome Human Services Commission and the local partners that we already have more funds available. That was a really more challenging change than it took a long time. It's actually 2 terms of council that it took to make that change, but it's exciting to see what that change will be, especially when we're looking at funding more diverse businesses and for support services specifically. The question about faith-based institutions are the fabric of the community in certain areas, right? So it's important for us to maintain positive relations with them, but not necessarily restrict funding only to those organizations, and also to listen when there are issues or concerns about the delivery of services, whatever that choice might be, so that it's an open and transparent process for the community. I also would love to second what Ms. Stewart mentioned about partnerships with our local organizations, and a second to what Vivek actually mentioned with this future forward thinking about making sure that the funding in human services does in fact pay forward, so that we understand that's an investment in the community and helpful to everyone, so that we all grow together. A couple other things about nonprofit missions in specific is making sure that the nonprofit themselves feels like their mission is being achieved. So you ask them if their impact and what their stated theory of change is, and if the funding that we are providing is enough for them to do that. So it makes them feel successful, it makes their community feel successful, and it doesn't shut anybody out. In this time of uncertain funding, potential loss or absence of federal funding and cuts at the state level, that does threaten our Department of Human Services, as well as the network of folks that we work with in the city. So one thought I had was making sure that the city has a way to showcase the successes, which can help draw private funding to the nonprofit organizations, and then maybe business incentives for local matching programs to help contribute and increase the funds that go to those organizations. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we're on to the audience questions section of the event, so continue sending those in. We'll give you each a minute to answer these, just so we can get through as many of them as possible. So the first question is, a significant portion of Redmond is foreign-born. What cross-cultural initiatives and events could City Council envision to create a united city where we're bridging our divides and avoiding ethnic enclaving while remaining proud of our identities? So I think we'll begin with Mr. Prakriya.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think this is a stat from 2020. I think it was 42.9%, but it's more now. Of the city is foreign born, and that's a beautiful thing. I think there are a few things that can be done here. One thing that I want to do is make sure that human services and any kind of service the city provides is as accessible as possible in any kind of multilingual context. We are so incredibly budget constrained right now at every level of government, but I believe we have new technologies, and this ties back to what I mentioned about I want us to be innovative as a city. I believe we have new technologies that will enable us to build out services so that someone can go type in their native language and get access to emergency shelter, or someone can go type in their native language and get access to, domestic violence protection, because oftentimes those are the people who are disproportionately in need of services like that. That's also acknowledging that, not everybody has access to a laptop, not everybody has access to the internet. So that is only a small step in how we get there. But that is one thing that I really, really want to push the city to innovate on. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. This is a great question. I'm excited for Menka's answer. But I think the idea here behind the nature of the city has been changing over time. And if we take the time to step back and celebrate the diverse identities that the community has, that looks like our Arts Commission, events out on the town, and then really making sure, again, that it is safe, accessible, and secure for folks to be who they are in the city. I believe firmly that it's important that folks can, no matter who you are, what you look like, or who you love, or who you worship, can feel welcome in the city and any place within the city. So making sure there's safe places for folks to go, whatever their situation may be, and then making sure that the enclaves, sort of diaspora idea, it's not necessarily viewed as a bad thing, but could be something that's recognized and respected. And that respect piece is a big part of it too. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Soni.
I definitely come from a cultural background, and I've been organizer of several cultural events as well, and also as the, arts and a cultural commissioner. So definitely, I personally feel that every event always bring a diverse set of people to the city. And when we are celebrating the different diversity, we are inviting different set of people to come forward and celebrate. The biggest thing that I want to see, and that should also happen, is that we embrace, like, bridge the gaps or that exist between the different communities, come forward, celebrate it together, so that we are able to weave one fabric of Redmond that's bringing everybody together. And definitely, like, it's very important that we are able to understand the language issues that people may have and try to explain. I've been always a big person who has been also talking about, to share the knowledge and share the culture across. I think we have to bring everybody together under one umbrella where we share our cultures, we talk about that, and we embrace that, whether it's in our neighborhood, whether it's a city events, or whether it's a different community events. We all need to be there together and celebrating this.
Thank you. And Ms. Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the question. Redmond is a place with incredible diversity, and that always isn't always our biggest asset yet, because we don't know what to do with that just yet. So I love this question. I think very often about getting to a place where we have a lot more representation on our boards and committees that reflect our community. To get to that point, we have to put in the work to get to the point where folks do want to raise their hand. I'm sorry, we have a little feedback on the line if someone needs to mute. No worries. So I think Redmond 2050 was a great way to reignite much of this by hiring trusted partners like so many of the community-based organizations who could help us make inroads with communities that aren't traditionally comfortable with walking into the halls of City Hall on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock to tell us how you feel. We've got to do things differently. And I think Redmond 2050 was a good start at teaching the city how to do things differently. Couple of other things. In this last budget cycle, I was able to help support a community event innovation fund. That was the dollars. As many of you on this call know, how we are going to get those dollars out to all of you to put on events, that could celebrate your cultures and help others get to know you. Many of you on this call were instrumental in giving us the feedback technically that the city needed to hear in order to make that happen successfully. So I look forward to seeing all the events next summer.
Thank you. Our next question is regarding the recent chaos and anxiety around immigration and deportation. What steps could you take on City Council to make sure that Redmond residents are informed about situations, connected, and feel protected when they go to access city services? That'll go to Ms. Soni first.
Yes, indeed. This is one of the biggest fear that people are living in. And as we are talking to many people, they have stopped going to, for their grocery shoppings, gas stations, or any of these areas where they feel totally unsafe. One of the things that we definitely have started asking everybody that, they should always keep their papers and their documents very safe. And if possible, like to carry some of these identifications with them so that, that's easier for the for the verifications. But most important, we have to convey a message to remove that fear and anxiety that they are safe. And we as a city is also working towards pushing some of these agendas outside from our state, from our city. And they will be supported. If they are correct, they will definitely be supported. They have been working and helping us from so long, and we definitely want to work with their mental health and anxiety at this moment. And in case if they are dealing with more of these stress, I think we should also refer them to some of the solutions, like with the public safety, whether it's police, whether it is the mental health departments or the other departments, so that they can get their questions and being addressed and know that what are their possible outcomes.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Takriya.
Well, thank you for the question. And I want to echo what I said in the last point. I believe that accessibility is key when it comes to governments, especially local government, which should be trusted, as was mentioned earlier. I think that accessibility is the biggest bottleneck when it comes to government provided services and people actually using those services. And for something as critical as this, this is where I think, building out services where someone can type their situation, their immigration status, and get access to local government support, whether that's a lawyer or whether that's, any kind of other support that they need in their native language is something that could be really critical, really effective. Making sure that internet is available to folks in places in Redmond so that they are able to go and conduct this research themselves. I think that things in government are very difficult to find, oftentimes, even for me with English being my first language. And that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about, building out some of these services is because I believe that A, we can now with new technology, and B, that it's really, really important, especially when it comes to the situations you're describing with ICE. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. This is a absolutely important and incredibly important question. I'll come back to the mention I had before about making sure that everybody feels safe and respected within the community. I will hat tip to Vivek again about accessibility and communication and making sure whatever messages the government is sending are clear and accessible to all members of our community. It is important that folks do feel connected and protected by the city services that we have. So that means relying on our public safety team to be safe, to be respectful. It is a huge fear for people who are immigrants, and it's understandable. Having experienced fear myself, it's one of those things that making sure that our public safety staff is focused on being guardians, not warriors, and understanding that we are there for people. The city public safety teams will be there for folks. One of the things I did want to mention was earlier this year, I proposed additional supports for our workers at the city to protect for things like other disadvantages from some of our workers on visas. And unfortunately, that didn't pass the council, but it was expanding the idea of some of the protections that are being lost at the federal level. A city has opportunity to make some more stringent standards and be a local leader in those protections as well for employees. So I think that's important as a model, as well as from businesses within our community to mirror after what the city does.
Thank you. And Ms. Stewart.
Thank you so much. There's not a city block, a city street, a floor of a multifamily home here in Redmond that isn't currently impacted by this fear and anxiety that is going on. I want everyone on the call and who's watching later to know that immigration enforcement is not the jurisdiction of the City of Redmond, and our teams at pretty much every department have been preparing to protect you. So yes, the police have some information for you on our website. There's an alert currently at the top of the city website. Additionally, the Parks Department and some of the other facilities like in City Hall, all of those staff have actually gone through exercises for what to do should immigration enforcement enter the building. And they're prepared. They know what to do. To the community-based organizations that are here on the call, the question is, what are we going to do as your council member? I want to keep in conversation with you. The $250,000 that we did in rapid response for right now is just a start. As I said, I also heard you loud and clear
sales on 24th.
When you asked for increased communication and coordination. Sorry, we've got someone.
Yeah, we're fine.
That's okay.
That. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And that $250,000 can also be leveraged for if any of you want to do Know Your Rights workshops. Some groups have applied for additional legal aid for residents. So this is the city, again, showing up to protect Redmond residents.
All right, thank you. We'll try and fit in 2 more questions before closing statements. The first question is, when we talk about diverse Redmond, we really thinking about Asian populations. So with 1 minute, how would you take steps on city council to interact more with BIPOC, African immigrants, and the Hispanic community? That question will go to Ms. Stewart. 1 minute.
Sure. Here's a very specific example, but just this week, another source of funding that the city has available to it is actually through our tourism dollars. So this week we saw the proposed grants for the next cycle. And I was so excited to see Adam's organization, Africans on the East Side, being awarded a grant to do a World Cup event next year. And although Adam doesn't know this, we haven't discussed this, I spoke up on their behalf on Tuesday. I think the city should do everything that they can do to streamline permitting and make it as easy as possible for Africans on the East Side to host their largest event ever in the city of Redmond. And it should be in one of our biggest and busiest parks. And it should be next to a light rail station. And we should just do that. And we should just show up for our community like that. So that's a very specific example from this week. And of course, we've been talking a lot about the different pockets of dollars that are available. In order for all of you to actually receive those dollars, you do have to vote yes on the budget. And I'm very proud to have done that. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Soni is next.
So, as per the Census 2020 data, there are 43% Asian, 7% Latino, and 2% Black. So, we don't want to ignore that population, and there's definitely more needs to be done so that we can attract more people, from the BIPOC community to even be in Redmond, be heard, and be a part of this. So definitely, we have to start looking out into the different events, their engagement, and maybe reaching out to them at their doorstep, at their events where they are able to raise their voices and able to explain it to us. To definitely need to be more welcoming, inclusive. See, I always pick up an example that, when we talk about diversity, we invite people on the dance floor, but we never dance with them. So, we don't have to just invite them to a dance, but we have to be there with them. So that's where I think we have to start engaging them more and more with all the events, with all the activities, and hear their voices so that they feel that they are present, they are being included.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. This is an unusual question, I think, for specifically calling out some different parts of the community. I just want to note that. But I think some of the things that the city can address is the stress of underrepresentation that is sort of underlying this question. Yes, to acknowledge that most of the community is Asian, and yes, there are discrepancies in underrepresentation, maybe at the city level as well as on the council, in making sure that there is leadership opportunities for folks that have the time to do that. But I think if we're really going to talk about how to engage folks and become more inclusive, we have to start talking about wages and the affordability crisis in the city, making it accessible. Maybe it's difficult for different levels of income to live here. We know that to be true. So this is, really, really focusing some of our programs on. I think there's definitely collaboration and efforts that we can make with some of our local nonprofit organizations. We have done some work on disadvantaged business and enterprises, minority-owned businesses. I think this is really important work that we should be adding our value where we should be putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to that. So I think it's important to make sure that folks feel safe and represented and also secure within the community. Thank you.
And Mr. Prakriya.
Thank you for the question. I think fundamentally, your job on council is to listen to your community and implement the values of your community. So what I want to do is, first of all, if I'm elected I on the campaign, you knock a lot of doors, but I don't want to stop knocking doors if I'm elected in November. Maybe at a little bit of a less rate. That's a lot right now, but that's not something I want to stop. But keeping in that spirit, I want to be as accessible as possible. I want to host public office hours. Even more than that, I want to go meet folks in the community who maybe been historically marginalized where they are at. Because I believe that's very, very powerful if your government can come to you, especially local government, which, is a nonpartisan position, which is a position that you should trust regardless of overall political affiliation. That's overall what I want to do. I want to go listen to people as actively as I possibly can, and I want to be as accessible to people as I possibly can.
All right, last question, then we'll head on to concluding statements. A lot of the nonprofits here tonight, IACS, CISC, have been doing a lot of the groundwork to support youth, seniors, and diverse communities. If you were on the city council, how do you see those partnerships growing when you're on the enhancing collaboration, ensuring equitable access to spaces, and growing that investment? So we'll begin that with Ms. Stewart. 1 minute.
Sure. Thank you so much to the organizations that were mentioned and the so many that weren't, especially when it comes to seniors in our community. I think that we I think we don't understand enough all of the groups, especially the cultural groups. Jewish Family Services is an organization here on the East Side that is playing a very particular role for a very particular group of seniors with a very particular cultural needs. There are so many services in our community offered to seniors um, by community-based organizations who are leading from their culture. And that is a beautiful thing. I think we have a lot of room to grow on this. I am very excited that this year we had, and in the last year, we had a lot of nonprofit available space come online. We had both the Redmond Senior and Community Center as well as the Events and Conference Center at Together Center come online, but cost continues to be a burden. Cost continues to be a burden, whether we're asking for $10 or $100. And I think that the council needs to come back to work on the fee-for-service cost recovery policy in the next budget cycle and reevaluate what's going on in those spaces.
Thank you. Ms. Soni is next.
I have definitely, been following all the great work done for the seniors by all the different organizations, and specifically want to mention IACS that they have been doing an amazing job. And I personally feel like, the last week was like week without car, and I participated fully and wholeheartedly. And I realized that there are so many challenges that are still happening, and it's really difficult for a lot of seniors to do the commute on these uphills, and whatever the modes of a transit are available, it's still a challenge. And it is bringing up this as one of the example. So if I have to solve this kind of a problem, I would work with these different organizations that are already working with the seniors to collect some of their information and their data to find out, how and where we can improve and come up with some more better solutions to handle these kinds of issues that exist. And we have to ensure that all our places are ADA approved and they are there. And plus, include the voices of seniors in our decision making, because they truly bring their experience and their resilience that they have witnessed and experienced in all these years.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. So the question was about youth, seniors, and diverse community equitable access to spaces. Frankly, I would really love to see representatives of these organizations come to share what they're doing with council. Take one of our study session meetings and just let us know what's going on. It would be wonderful for us to celebrate the work that's being done and then ask these questions about how we can help meet those needs of our youth organizations. We do have occasionally we meet with the RIPAC organization, but that's not all teens. Teen Center is one of the big things that's been up on council's radar recently, and our Senior and Community Center. Would love to know how that's working for folks as well. And in general, I think if we take the time to meet and showcase folks while they're with us on a public meeting, it would be wonderful to share some of those stories with the community to hear what's successful, what's working, what's not. Specifically, I was thinking a couple things, making sure that we don't add burden to our senior community, our fixed income community, and then making sure that there's safe places for teens to go. That's a big issue for me personally as well. So to making sure that there's safe, respected places within the city for folks to live, work, and play. Thanks.
And Mr. Pratria.
Thank you. Yeah, I will say an overall big picture, and then I'll touch on those individual groups. I think overall, the city does a pretty good job at data gathering. And I think our city does a better job at data gathering than many, many cities around the country. And that's something that's honestly really, really cool. It means we're actually driven by, what our community feels is the right thing to do. But I truly do believe, like I mentioned in the last question, in meeting people where they are at. And I think that is fundamentally what makes a good council member is I don't think you can expect folks to come all the way down to city council meetings. I think you have to go meet them where they are at. And that's something I want to be as proactive as possible in doing. When it comes to the youth, I think that I know Redmond has maybe started steps in creating a youth council, but going to schools, talking to folks in those schools about transportation, about other issues they may face, talking to seniors who are facing affordability crises, who may have to leave Redmond, talking about ways that they could maybe potentially downsize and stay in their communities. Talking to those diverse groups, like we mentioned in the last question. I think we have to go meet them, not expect them to come to us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, since it's 7:25, I think it's time for our 1-minute closing statements. A brief statement from each of you about why voters should elect you or re-elect you next month. So we'll begin with Ms. Stewart.
Thank you so much once again for the conversation. I feel like we just scratched the surface and we could go on all night. I really am honored to have your time. And please, let's stay in conversation. Please reach out, send me some feedback, visit my office hours. They're at the library every other Thursday. As I shared at the top, accessibility is one of my core goals as your council member, as well as consistency, showing up for Redmond's values and preparedness to do so. I hope I gave you a little bit of glimpse about what that looks like in that work right now. I'm honored to have a really broad support for my reelection, and I'm very honored to be the only incumbent on your ballot who is supported by your Redmond firefighters, to have the support of MLK Labor and more than 30 elected officials across East King County. That speaks to the amount of regional partnership and leadership work that I also take on. We didn't even get into that tonight, but I'm on a bunch of boards because the questions you've asked us about Redmond tonight matter just as much in our neighbors in Kirkland and Bellevue, and our goals are so intricately connected. Thanks again for your time, and reach out at votemelissastewart.com.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Jerry Lee Anderson. I am serving my second term on the Redmond City Council, and I'm asking for your vote for this next election. I've served as a nonprofit CEO for the last 15 years of a transportation-related infrastructure organization, and I'm a dog mom, a stepmom, a granddaughter of veterans, and a member of a union family. I'm proudly endorsed by the National Women's Political Caucus, Planned Parenthood, and Democrats for Diversity and Inclusion. I am very excited to add and I should say, maintain stability as we go into this uncertain time. My background is in environmental sustainability and making sure that helping Redmond get beyond business as usual to maintain a secure, prepared, and future-proof City of Redmond going forward. My background also includes making sure for environmental justice as well as economic justice, focused on workforce development, and I'm really excited to serve the community for another term. I appreciate your time this evening, and if you have questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Prakriya.
Thank you. I want to thank you for hosting this. I want to thank you for putting this together. I believe that getting things done requires coalitions, right? We are a council. We're not a dictatorship. And if you want to get something done, you have to get the majority of council to agree with you. You have to get folks from other levels of government, from the state, from the county, from even the federal government in some instances when it comes to issues like ICE. You have to get them, you have to build consensus, you have to build coalition. And I think my campaign has managed to build coalition. I'm proud to be endorsed by all 6 sitting state legislators who represent Redmond, Congresswoman Susan Dalbene, Governor Gary Locke, Redmond firefighters, and a whole host of other elected officials. But beyond endorsements, I believe that I will be accessible, transparent, and accountable on City Council. I'm dropping my personal phone number in the chat right now in case any of you want to reach out. But thank you again for hosting. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Soni.
Hi, first of all, thank you for hosting this event and anybody who is going to listen to this conversation later. I'm running for Redmond City Council because I truly believe that our city's future should be as compassionate as it is innovative. I want to have my city, our city, that will grow smartly, sustainably, and inclusively. My journey that started as a nonprofit leader, as a small business owner, as a community advocate, as well as from the corporate, has taught me that real progress will happen when we will listen, collaborate, and act with heart. I've been working at the grassroots level, helping several homeless neighbors, several low-income communities, people suffering from mental health issues or the domestic violence, and I've been providing help and resources to them for over a decade. So I am bringing in an experience from over a decade, whether it has been through my nonprofit, whether it has been through my arts commission from last 5 years, or as a vice president of One Redmond Foundation, I have already worked on a lot of things and issues that city has been working, and I want to take it to the next level. I am proud to be the only candidate that has been endorsed by all majority of the democratic organizations as well as leaders from across, from Olympia to King County to our city, and that includes, like, our Congressman Adam Smith, our King County council members, and all the other local organizations, plus over 100 leaders and other organizations. So I am just looking to build Redmond that is innovative, inclusive, and aspiring. And I'm Minka Soni, running for Redmond City Council position number 6, and truly ask for your humble support and vote.
All right. Thank you so much. And on behalf of the East King County Asian and Pacific Islander Coalition, we deeply appreciate all of you spending your evening with us. Audience members, thank you for your participation. If you have follow-up questions you would like to ask the candidates, please check their websites to see their upcoming events. I'm sure they'd be happy to meet with you and answer your questions. A quick reminder for everyone that Election Day is November 4th, with early voting beginning on October 17th. So please make sure your voice is heard. Thanks again, and have a good night.